you've been doing this for a very long time. What are like some of the important things in the hobby that you think, like, if there's a need for change everywhere, right? But what if you could pinpoint a few things that you think like these are the first things we need to change? These are the important things. What are some of the things you would like kind of point out?
Well, I think one of the things, and I don't even know how you fix this, and I don't know necessarily if it's a problem per se, but it is hard to look at reptile keeping without getting the full blast message in your face that it's mostly about the keeper enjoying keeping the animals. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, but if that is your starting place and your finishing place, we run into a lot of problems. So if it's completely a selfish endeavor, it's an issue. And I would never say that reptile keeping isn't selfish in some way. Of course it is. There's parts about reptile keeping that is all for you as the keeper, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's a highly interesting and intriguing and challenging, and you learn a lot. It's very rewarding in many ways. So there is a selfish part. There's nothing wrong with being selfish. Eating a meal could be considered selfish. You have to live, but there's nothing wrong per se with that. But if you don't extend it beyond, in my opinion, to the animals as well, we run into problems. And I think that is some of the big areas we've kind of hit the ditch with herpetoculture over the past 20 years. Is it has just become, not everywhere, but there's been segments of our hobby that it is just about the interest that the person has and what they're doing with the animal. And it's very obvious that the animals are not, in some ways, not even playing second fiddle to that. They're not even considered in that. You can hear it when people talk about the animal itself. They're telling you about the characteristics that animal carries or what's interesting about the species, but they're not actually telling you about the specific animal that's in their hand, which I think is a danger, because we wouldn't do that. Well, some people would, but we typically wouldn't do that with dogs or cats. We want to respect each individual within the hobby as an individual, and it's not a woo-woo thing, like a spiritual thing. It's each animal in our care is they don't have the choice to be there, and I think there's a huge argument to be made that increasing the welfare of each animal in our collection is a positive thing, and it's not even positive for just the animal, it's also positive for the keeper. But I would say if we can somehow shift the focus to go back to the animal first, I think that is really a crucial aspect to keeping the hobby healthy and functioning, because anybody that looks to the hobby from an outsider perspective, that's all they see as well. Like if you just see a room of racks, you don't see somebody who's very passionate about each individual animal. That person could be passionate about each individual animal, but it's not the optic, that's not what we see when we look into it. And I think the more we can do to promote the message that we actually do care about every individual, it would do a lot for helping our hobby grow and thrive.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. So is there something that you would encourage people to, is there like a philosophy that you would share or something that you would encourage people to do to kind of start on this path?
I think the easiest way is you have to be very aware of the way a human brain works, and we thrive off dopamine, and dopamine feels good, especially if you're somebody who falls into the ADD category, ADHD. You are somebody and there's a lot of us in this hobby because it sort of caters to that. You're somebody who's addicted to dopamine, and you're going to be chasing those dopamine spikes. And the easiest way to get a massive dopamine hit in our hobby is by purchasing a new animal. And it's not by actually getting a new animal. It's the purchase and then the anticipation of getting that animal. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's the exact same mechanism that works for slot machines. It's not the reward you get. It's the anticipation of watching the thing spin until you figure out if you've won or not. That's where the dopamine kicks in. And so we have to be very aware that there's a framework in our brain that's millions of years old that is for striving towards producing dopamine. And if we let that take control, you end up chasing dopamine over and over and over again. And like I said, the easiest way to do that is continuously purchasing an animal after another animal and another animal. And then you end up in a situation where you're overwhelmed. So that's the first thing. Pay attention to what your brain's doing. Do I actually want this animal, or is it just a need to, fulfill this dopamine spike? And then the best part is you can actually induce a dopamine spike through improving the home or the care of an animal that you currently have. And everybody knows that once you start working on a new enclosure, maybe you have new ideas. I'm going to put new lighting here. I'm going to actually tear this down completely and get new branches. That is as fun as getting a new animal. But if you don't actually go down that path, then you just get the new animal and you realize then that, you know, that, like I said, the snowball starts. But you can, in some ways, thwart or redirect that wanting to do something new with the current animals you have rather than having to buy new animals.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, especially that feeling of, like you said, I'm going to put that branch here, I'm going to put that light here, and then seeing the animal perch on that branch right under the light, and you're like, I nailed it. That's also an incredible feeling. So maybe more people just need to get hooked onto that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So on that, would you like to see the reptile hobby grow and have more people keeping reptiles, or do you think that the more we expand, the more detrimental it could be for reptiles and conservations? Like, where do you lie on the hobby growing as a whole?
I think the hobby growing is not a bad. Hey there, thank you very much for watching this clip. I encourage everybody to go check out my appearance on Daffy's Round Table. That's episode number 73. You can click the link on the screen right now, or just head to Daffy's Round Table on YouTube and find episode number 73. Enjoy.